So, Wally, I'm kind of a dinosaur as far as medicine is concerned. I'm still in private practice. I'm still a solo doctor here in Nacogdoches, Texas. And I've been fighting this battle against, the changes that we're seeing in medicine these days. And, I had my own building. And for me, it was kind of my retirement. And it was pretty much I'd put everything into that building. It was also kind of my home away from home. It was kind of my refuge, if so to speak. And so one Friday afternoon, I was clicking buttons uh, on my computer and trying to finish up some electronic medical records, and I heard this funny, it sounded like a shotgun. And it sounded like it just happened right outside the building. And so I went around, walked around the building, everything was fine. My computer started acting funny. Called in my computer guy, and he said, "Man, everything's fine." So I said, "Well, what the heck? It's Friday afternoon. What am I doing? My family's at home waiting on me." So I got in my car and headed back to the house. And by the time I got to the house, the emergency room called me and they said, "Doctor." And I said, "Wait a minute, I'm not on call." They says, "No, that's not what we're calling. Your building is on fire."
Welcome to Men of Abundance, the podcast for those looking to level up their lives by hanging out with some of the greatest leaders and established professionals in our community, living a life of integrity, honor, and the abundance mentality. Prepare to pay it forward with your host, former Army medic turned lifestyle entrepreneur, Wally Carmichael.
What is going on, all of you amazing, abundant leaders out there? I am Wally Carmichael, your founder and host of the Men of Abundance podcast, the Pay It Forward community, proving to you that you can, in fact, live a life of abundance in family, faith, finances, and fitness on your way to having more. And I assure you, there is absolutely nothing wrong with having more as long as you're doing something bigger than yourself and you're adding value to others. It has been a little while. It has been a couple months. I think it was May 21st or something like that since the last time I posted an interview, and that interview was with J.V. Crum III. Absolutely amazing conversation. Make sure you go check that out with the Conscious Millionaire. And I have to say, thank you very much to those of you who reached out to me periodically to ask me if everything was all right. There wasn't an episode posted, and I know some of you kind of wait for them, and I greatly, greatly appreciate that. And I thank those of you who reached out. I've already reached out to you personally to thank you, and I greatly appreciate you for noticing that I wasn't posting any episodes and check on me, see if everything's okay. Everything is okay. In fact, everything is great. Since the COVID thing hit, I got super busy with my business as a business consultant, and it's just ramped up and gone international. I've now got clients and coaches on my team all over the world. It's super exciting, but it's been keeping me very busy, and I have not forgotten about all of you amazing, abundant leaders out there and Men of Abundance listeners and all of the people I've already had conversations with for the show, so I'm in the process of ramping that back up. So why did I stop? What made me hold back? Well, I'm not at liberty to talk about that right now. But stay tuned, because I will be revealing what I'm up to in the next couple of weeks, and you are absolutely going to love it. And many of you are going to greatly benefit what it is that I've been working on that'll be coming up in the next 2 to 3 weeks. So be sure to hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast player if you haven't done so already. And I would greatly appreciate it if you were to go over to iTunes or even use your podcast player that you're using to leave a rating and review. I can't express how important this is in the podcasting world and the search engines, so that other people can find Men of Abundance and get access to these amazing conversations, these life-changing, life-altering conversations like the one we're going to have today. So be abundant in your actions today by paying it forward. Take just a couple of minutes, leave a rating and review for Men of Abundance so others can find these conversations and get out of them what you've been getting out of them. I greatly appreciate you. So I got to tell you, I had a lot of fun with this conversation. But I do have to warn you, the kick in the gut moment that our featured guest shares with us today is a gut wrencher. So I want to prepare you for that. But it's super important because it is sure to light your soul on fire for whatever it is that you want to do and achieve in life. So let's get right into it. Our featured guest today is a surgeon, author, and storyteller who has had a ringside seat to the sick and suffering. He's the best guy to see on your very worst day of life. Chuck has been married to Joanna for 24 years. Together they have 5 children and live in Texas. His new book, A Spoonful of Courage for the Sick and the Suffering, helps those facing a health crisis change focus, embrace their obstacles, and move forward. And you can find that book and so much more amazing information about Charles Page at charlespage.com. Make sure you go check it out. Now, Men of Abundance, it is my pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Charles Page. Dr. Chuck, welcome to Men of Abundance. How you doing, man?
Great, Wally. Good to be here.
Excellent. Where are you at in the world?
Nacogdoches, Texas. It's deep East Texas.
I've been all over Texas as we were talking pre-show, but I have not been to nor even heard of Nacogdoches, Texas.
Well, we call it Nac of Nowhere. So there's a Nacogdoches, Louisiana. If you think about the Louisiana Purchase side, the French called the Indians Natchitoches. And so on the Spanish side, they describe the Indians as Nacogdoches. So there's a Natchitoches, Louisiana, and a Nacogdoches, Texas. They kind of mirror each other.
Very, very interesting. I got educated today. I love it. Anytime I can learn something new, I'm all about it.
Me too.
I appreciate that. Well, I like to start out with an attitude of gratitude, man. What do you have to be grateful for today?
Where do I start with that? So before the coronavirus pandemic hit, I was in Africa and I was over there working in a hospital. And man, I just realized how many things that we take for granted every day. With the coronavirus pandemic and, having, everybody's been so concerned about resources, and when you care for patients over there, you realize there are no resources. So we're just so fortunate to be in a place where we have, not only do we have, tons of medical resources and things, we just live in a really good place. And I think so often we just lose sight of that. I'm also thankful for my family. I'll be celebrating my 25-year anniversary with my wife this year, and she's put up with me. We've got 5 great kids who are making good choices. So, and then we get into the spiritual things. I'm just so thankful just for the fact that, God loves me, that God has done for me what I couldn't do for myself, so, just so many levels of things to be thankful for.
Wow, absolutely. Definitely a lot to be thankful for there. And I'll tell you, I do wish more people could get outside of their little bubble, outside of their circle, outside of their state, let alone outside of the country. Because my experience, having been to 23 countries on 5 continents with nothing more than an aid bag, and I've traveled I've traveled with providers, and I've traveled with all kinds of medical equipment and from various things, from just an aid bag to a full surgical team. But for instance, when I was in Honduras, we used to go down to Macora, and I literally had in my aid bag more than the doctor had in his clinic. And we would always take some of our stuff down there for them. So, and not just about the medical assets, but just about, life, luxuries of life in general that we have access to, even if it's government provided. We have so much more than the average person around the world, especially Africa and places in South and Central America where I've been, and all over Asia.
Well said. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It gives you a different perspective of life and living, and definitely makes you so much more thankful.
Absolutely. It definitely minimizes the complaining as well, because I hear things and I'm like, and I try not to, it's their reality. It's anybody's personal reality. But my thing is I have this little thing that I say, and it's kind of true in my world, is that, I'm sleeping in a warm bed tonight and I'm not being shot at or dodging mortar rounds. So it's a good day.
It can always be worse, couldn't it?
It certainly could. So thank you for that. And thank you for doing what you're doing. And what were you doing over in Africa, by the way? I'd love to hear that story.
Well, so I'm training surgeons over there. So they have about 10 different surgery residencies based in mission hospitals where, we're training surgeons not only to become better surgeons, but to become better people. I mean, and
Mm.
there's so many challenges I think that doctors are facing today, wherever you live. In fact, interestingly, in the United States, the suicide rate for doctors is the highest of any other profession. So we're really, in a crisis as far as doctors. So, like you said, for me, going over there is an attitude adjustment. I realize, because there's so many things that I get upset and I complain about. But when I go over there, I realize, man, we've really got it good. But so we're over there just investing in the lives of these surgeons. You're not going to change sub-Saharan Africa. They do crazy things, and you see things that just, you know, just just makes your head spin.
Hmm.
But when you invest in the lives of other people, they're the people that are going to change Africa. As they become the leaders in medicine and the leaders in surgery, they're the guys that are going to make the difference.
Well, it's all about just being that example, making sure that they have the technical skills, but then as a man, as a human being that example. I've had the opportunity to do that as well, and I know the feeling, especially when there's challenges like in the Middle East. And
Yeah.
specifically, one specific example, I was in Uzbekistan, and we were sitting around a table with a bunch of doctors and nurses, and we're all just talking and sharing ideas and technologies, and we were just, I couldn't believe they still had sutures in like little vials that you had to break open. It was really interesting. But
I've
when
never
we,
seen that.
yeah, well, this was mid '90s,
Yeah.
and so as we walk from that building over to, we were going to get lunch or something, and I'm walking with a couple of the guys, and all of a sudden I feel somebody grab my hand, and it was a rough hand. It was one of the guys, right? That's walking along, and it's just normal to hold hands when you're walking down there in that environment, and the hair on the back of my neck stood up. But I, when you're in Rome, it's like, it was an interesting experience, and I really cherish those moments. So, and I'm sure you do as well.
I'll tell you one of the funny things about that, and sometimes we kind of are used to weird things like that, but in another culture. But
Hmm.
even with my sons, it's funny with kids.
Yeah.
Before they're 12, they think you're Superman. And then after 12, it's a whole different game. But I remember my kids were about 11 or 12. My boys we'd be somewhere and they'd want to hold my hand, and it was just so odd. you
Hmm.
know I mean, because now, even in our culture, that has a different context. But
Right.
it's amazing.
Yeah, my 10-year-old still does. Same thing. We go to the parks or we go over wherever. He still wants to hold my hand. I've got a 26-year-old and a 20-year-old too. So you're right. It stops about that time. So 13 in the teens are like, Dad, who? Not really, but they're not holding your hand anymore. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's a whole different game.
In fact, I would do that with my 20-year-old once in a while. We'd be walking through the parks and I'd reach over and grab his hand. He'd look at me like I'm crazy. I love doing stuff like that. They know I'm crazy. It's a lot of fun. Well, before we got started here, I shared your bio, and that's some of the professional stuff that you're doing, but we like to get to know the man behind the abundance. So if you would share with us, how would you describe yourself?
Well, I am a person who continues to fall forward.
Amen to that, brother.
I mean, I continue to fall forward. I mean, definitely, I believe that's what grace is about, is that God does for us what we can't do for ourselves. And so, I'm not perfect, and I make a lot of mistakes. And, I'm kind of one of those guys that always likes to have my hands in a lot of different things. And so, with that comes failure. But I'm like that surgeon, that used to say, I've never made a mistake, but I got a real short memory.
Yeah.
But I'm learning there's things that the old saying, we remember things that we should forget, and we forget things that we should remember. And I'm
Mhm.
learning to forget those things in life that I should forget and just move on. And I think that's one of the keys to being successful spiritually, in business and in your relationships. We just kind of have to keep going. And sometimes that involves making mistakes and, being able to just fess up and say, hey, I was wrong, and move ahead with people.
Yeah, I totally agree. And many people do hold on to things they should forget for much too long. I love that saying, how you just stated that. I can't repeat it at this point, but I appreciate you saying that because that is very, very profound. To reflect on that, guys, to go back and rewind it and listen to that again and even write it down, I would think, to put it in front of you.
Well, I don't know if I can say it again either.
I
But
was hoping you could, but anyhow, we got to record it, so it's
yeah,
good.
we remember the things that we should forget, and we forget the things that we should remember.
Amen.
You know,
Absolutely. Yeah, that's for sure. Well, you've obviously have had the opportunity to do some amazing things in your life, and you're falling forward. And along the way, sometimes we get kicked in the gut a little bit. I'd like for you to share with us a kick in the gut moment and really make us feel that. And then we're going to get into what did you learn from that, and what have you done with that information? Has it helped you at all, and have you been able to reach out and pay it forward to help others with that information?
so Wally, I'm kind of a dinosaur as far as medicine is concerned. I'm still in private practice. I'm still a solo doctor here in Nacogdoches, Texas, and I've been fighting this battle against the changes that we're seeing in medicine these days. And I had my own building, and for me, it was kind of my retirement, and it was pretty much I'd put everything into that building. It was also kind of my home away from home. It was kind of my refuge, if so to speak. And so one Friday afternoon, I was clicking buttons uh, on my computer and trying to finish up some electronic medical records, and I heard this funny, it sounded like a shotgun. And it sounded like it just happened right outside the building. And so I went around, walked around the building, everything was fine. My computer started acting funny. Called in my computer guy and he said, "Man, everything's fine." So I said, "Well, what the heck? It's Friday afternoon. What am I doing? My family's at home waiting on me." So I got in my car and headed back to the house. And by the time I got to the house, the emergency room called me and they said, "Doctor." And I said, "Wait a minute, I'm not on call." They says, "No, that's not what we're calling. Your building is on fire."
Mm.
And so, I turned back and, of course, watched my building go up in smoke. And man, it's just one of those things. It was one of the most challenging moments of my life. There's been others, that you're talking about that kick in the gut moment, but here it was. Am I going to be able to survive? In the context of private practice and being a doctor, and I really didn't want to be an employee. I wouldn't make a good employee. So as I'm watching things rise, I began to realize that, man, life's never going to be the same. My wife held my hand and she said, "Honey, all is not lost." And um, as we began to look into the building, of course, it was pretty much just, it was gone. There's just muck and old black water coming out of the roof. This part of the structure was still there. There was something that I really, I was trying to find things that I could hang on to. And as I walked around, I remembered there's a stairwell. In fact, I'd been praying in this stairwell. I'm a prayer challenged person. I can't stay still long enough to really pray. And so what I would do is I'd kind of crawl up the stairs, and it would kind of help me to focus on praying. And it was kind of a place where I'd met with God, and I'd went through a lot of the challenges that we face, as doctors these days, and as a man, and as a husband, all these things. It was just a place where I'd met with God, and I kind of wondered what would be there in that stairwell. And sure enough, the stairwell had survived the fire. And in that stairwell, I found four things that really I felt like I could rebuild my life upon. And one of those things was a Bible. The Bible had been, it had been burned. There was soot all over it, but yet it had survived the fire. The second thing was an old black doctor's bag. I had one of those old doctor's bag, the doctors
Mhm.
carried. It was funny. The black soot had made it look almost new. I
Mm.
realized, that even though I hadn't lost, and even though I lost my building, I hadn't lost my practice. Yes, it was going to be different, but, there was just, I still had the opportunity to serve people, irregardless of what context that was in. The third thing up the stairwell was pictures of my 5 kids. My wife had made these pictures of our kids at 4 years of age. And right as the kind of the stairwell turned, there was the picture of my kids, and they were still intact. It's funny, the fire had kind of singed them, and they kind of had this gray looking appearance where all the color had been bleached. And it kind of looked like Ansel Adams pictures, but there was my kids. And I realized, wow, that's something that I really need to invest my life, in. I mean, I still had my children, and there were people in my life that I could still influence, for Christ and for a positive way.
Mm.
And then up at the top of the stairs, my wife, she had painted this beautiful wall, and it was this beautiful stained wood, and she had put this cross on the wall. And man, it just looked hideous. It was all charred and black and just full of soot. And when I got up there and I began to take that cross off the wall, I began to realize that behind the cross, where it was nailed to the wall, there was still a beautiful stained image of the cross there. And as I thought about that, I thought about, wow, so often in our lives things happen that we just can't wrap our mind around, we just can't explain, but yet the purpose of all those things, I believe, is that God wants to, imprint his image in our lives through that suffering, and those were 4 things I felt like I could rebuild my life upon. First of all, the scriptures, and those things that never change. My practice, what I'm called to do as a doctor, my family, friends, people I can influence, and finally, there's just going to be things that happen in our lives that we just can't explain. But yet knowing that God's going to work all those things out for a reason. And we're never going to be able to wrap our mind around the meaning of why we go through some things on this side of eternity. I just believe that. But yet what's most important is those are the things I believe that God uses the most to take and really conform us into his image and show the reflection of who he is through those things.
Well, that's a very powerful message, and thanks for sharing that. That's very personal, and I greatly appreciate you sharing that with us. I can't imagine sitting there watching that burn down like that, but get such a strong message out of it.
Well, I'll tell you, and we're talking about the gut level moment, kind of the kick in the gut and the change. So I live in a small town, and this got around. It was on the news and everything, and man, I'm just trying to figure out what to do next, and I was on call that weekend. Actually, I was on call, so I had to go in and see people in the hospital. And really what motivated me the most was hearing people's stories. I mean, I had a man that told me his story, and he said, "Doc, you're not going to believe this, but my house burned down too. And I had an invalid wife in the house, and I couldn't get her out, and I had to watch my house burn with her on the inside." As I heard that guy's story, I realized, man, I have nothing to complain about. Whatever pity party I might throw, it pales into comparison to what that guy's going through. And it's funny, as I began to hear people's stories, something began to click on the inside, and I began to think, wow, man, stories, when we hear the stories of other people and what they've gone through, it really does something to us, even more than the platitudes and, the scriptures that we know that, they're true, but yes, but on the other hand, we're true, but it really doesn't connect with us sometimes, and, but the stories really make a difference. And that's kind of what I think, in a sense, kind of motivated me to start writing this book, Spoonful of Courage. These are stories of people who have went through, difficult times and have kind of went through on the other side, and they've kind of became better, and God's kind of done some great things in their life through that. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm still, like I said, falling forward.
Well, speaking of your book, Spoonful of Courage, tell us a little bit more about the book, and I see your inspiration, of course, but who's specifically it for? What's the premise of it?
Well, it's for anyone who's going through a health crisis, and in fact, think about the COVID crisis now and what people are going through. And there's a lot of people that are so afraid of dying that they don't really live, and I think we all kind of have that fear every once in a while. But But what these stories are, these are real stories about real people, and it just shows the impact that faith makes. I mean, um, suffering is real. That's why it's not called a spoonful of sugar. I mean, I'm not trying to sugarcoat suffering. I mean, it's real, and it's tough. And as a surgeon, I've kind of had this ringside seat to see how people suffer. And I've seen the positive and the negative to how people go through tough times. But what I hope the stories do is help people to change focus. I mean, so often we go through a challenging time, and we focus on our feelings. We feel alone, we feel afraid, we feel inadequate. All of those emotions go through our minds, and kind of what I want the stories to do is kind of help people to go back and focus back on the facts, facts, faith, and then our feelings. And so that's kind of what I'm hoping that people will get through the book. By the way, it's for free right now on Amazon, so you can just go to Amazon and get a free Kindle download on it. But my publisher felt like it was a good idea just to give it away for free right now, because
Mhm.
it's such a needed topic right now, and it's on the forefront of everybody's mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. And listen, guys, we were talking about traveling and getting outside of your little bubble. For those of you who have not, I think the next best thing is to read about the stories of people and get, feel the empathy, I guess you could say, in their lives, and get an understanding of what other people are going through to kind of put your life into perspective. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir. They say readers are leaders.
Hmm.
I'm a surgeon, so I'm kind of challenged when it comes to reading. At least the internists say that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, reading is huge.
Yeah, at least you put yourself into those situations and kind of see life through somebody else's eyes and walk in somebody else's shoes, so to speak. And you tend to be more appreciative of your own life, or you could just watch old reruns of Jerry Springer. That'll do it too.
Seems like I live that every day.
I used to say that all the time. I watch Jerry Springer so I can be more appreciative of my own family. I'm like, it works too. But whatever works for you guys. I mean, the bottom line is just understand that everything in perspective, it's all about perspective. And that's why I like to say I've been through a lot of different stuff. I've been in a homeless situation. I grew up in a single wide trailer behind another man's house. I've been all over the world. I've seen true, honest to goodness poverty. I've been to places where women don't have nearly the rights that we do here in
Right.
our world. And other people for that matter, and how kids are treated. It's a terrible thing. So I I've jumped out of airplanes. You're talking about people being afraid of death. I know people right now that are terrified.
Man, that puts falling forward to a whole different level,
Indeed,
Wally.
indeed, for sure. It certainly does, man, because you literally fall out of the airplane. You don't really jump. So there's a little info for you guys there. But the fact of the matter is, we used to say I've cheated death once again. I've done some things. So I know people right now that are really terrified of going outside. And I'm not. I mean, I'm healthy though. I get it for those who have an immune deficiency of some sort and are much older. And because I've been watching the data and seeing all of
Right.
that, what are your thoughts to those people? Because I'm going to put this out there sooner than later, just because of the nature of the conversation. But what do you say to those who are afraid to go outside right now with everything going on and not live their life?
Well, like I said, there's so many people that are afraid of dying that they don't really live. And I think that's one of the take home messages that we need to kind of, we need to get deep in our souls, is that, God's got us. We're going to be okay. As far as the COVID virus, I mean, there's a lot of fear and I believe hype over the COVID virus. Yes, people are dying. And yes, it is more severe than the flu. And, but what we see often on the media is that tip of the iceberg. We see the ICU doctor or the ER doctor in a place where it's so bad. What we don't see is we don't see the primary care doctor who may see 15 or 20 COVID viruses patients with the COVID virus every day. So we got to keep things in perspective, just like you said earlier. Perspective. It's about that. Yes, I mean there are people that are at high risk for this, and those are people who need to continue social distancing. I mean, good common sense is good, but it's crazy even in the medical field. I have two hospitals in this town, and each have different strategies for the virus, and no one really knows what the right strategy is. I'm a firm believer that you can't stop a virus.
Mm-hmm.
And of course the idea of flattening the curve, I mean, that was a good thing. Now at this point, I think we have to change the strategy a little bit. And I know you're in Tampa. Florida's strategy seemed to be a really good strategy, where the people that were at risk, we tend to protect them, and we tend to get most of us back who are pretty healthy back into daily living. As far as the healthy people, though, the other extreme of that is I see a lot of people who are healthy and are not really thinking about other people, and really it's about, your cousin who has breast cancer, who's immunosuppressed with chemotherapy, or your grandmother who has, lung disease or whatever, or multiple medical problems. We got to think about those people. And so we really need to keep our social distancing, and I'm not here to beat you over the head whether you should wear a mask or not wear a mask. I mean, there's not a lot of scientific evidence either way about this, and so it's funny, but I do think just good common sense, washing your hands and trying to stay away from folks who are at risk for having problems with the COVID virus. I mean, I think that makes good sense,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's something that everybody can do.
Yeah, I agree. And that's in line with what I'm reading in my personal experience in the medical field as well in relation to the masks. I mean, like the N95, which I was fitted for several throughout the years. And I think they said it can, basically it blocks up to 0.5 microns or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think the COVID is like 0.2. So it's going to get through.
Right. And that's yeah.
And if you think the bandana is going to make a difference,
yeah,
I think you got
the bandana ain't doing much at all, especially if you wash it once, because the threads get thinner. So and that's the whole thing. And actually hospitals and stuff, I mean, they're making all these crazy rules that really don't really have any science behind them. And of course, I mean, if you think about it, though, the mask, I mean, if you have the disease and you cough, at least it will catch the majority of the respiratory droplets. So there is kind of a method, to the madness. But I mean, I just think common sense needs to rule.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the biggest concern, is those that are definitely at risk. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's, I appreciate that you share that. It wasn't really part of our conversation per se, but with everything going on and coming from you, I greatly appreciate that, because you have a private practice, which, thank you, by the way. That's not an easy task. For those who don't know, not many doctors actually do very well in a private practice. I know this personally because of doctors I've talked to who have tried it, and then there's so much red tape, and then there's malpractice lawsuits, and there's this. They can't practice. They spend all the time doing all the paperwork and whatnot, and the coding and everything. So thank you for that.
It's been a challenge, but it's worth it. But it's worth it. I'll tell you, to run my own business and be able to, and I think about, the people that work for us, and we provide them jobs, and they're really like part of my family. I mean, this is more of it's a business, but it's also a ministry. It's both. It's a business tree. And we're able to care for a lot of people. Actually, we serve in an underserved area, so we're able to care for people a lot of times who don't get care from the hospital or the employed doctors, and that's kind of what's happened with medicine's changed, and we've really kind of lost our focus. It's really about the patient. And, especially with all the changes that have came down the pike, it's really becoming more about economics than ethics and relationships. And that's one of those things I'm trying to hold on to as long as I can.
Mm-hmm. Well, I appreciate that. And thanks again. Well, Doc, I'll tell you, we're at the point where we're going to pay it forward. You ready to do that?
Sure.
Excellent. So share 1 to 3 actionable steps that men of abundance can take today.
Oh, wow. I think first of all, um, accepting your circumstances, first thing, acceptance, accepting whatever circumstances that we're in, that, that God has, he may not have done this personally to you, but he's allowed it for a reason. And there's opportunities for growth, opportunities to influence others, in our difficult circumstance. So acceptance, and then the next thing I would say is probably adjustment. We're going to have to make adjustments in our lives, both spiritually. There's some things often when we go through a difficult crisis in our lives, we kind of realize where we've been kind of messing up and not measuring up. And so we have to make adjustments spiritually, coming back to God in areas that we need to, making amends in relationships and things, and adjusting things. And then finally, cooperation, realizing that um, no matter what the circumstances we face in our life, COVID virus or sick spouse or financial problems, whatever they are, um, that we can cooperate with God, and that God has a way to kind of to empower us, either to deliver us out of that circumstance, or empower us and equip us to go through it.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love that. Thanks for sharing that. What are the rituals that make the biggest impact in your life?
What individuals?
No, what rituals? What
What
habits and
rituals?
rituals? Mhm. That too. You
every
can
day
throw
is
that in there.
every day is a new day for me, Wally. So, I really believe that getting up in the morning and reading the Bible, getting a good night's sleep, going to bed at the same time is really significant. I mean, actually, I wrote a book on that, and I'm one of those do as I say, not as I do doctors. I found that I had a sleeping disorder and didn't even know it. So getting a good night's sleep, um, reading your Bible, really nurturing your time with God, spending time with the people that mean the most in your life. I mean, it seems like for me, everybody wants a piece of me, and learning to say no, and really put kids, my kids and my wife as a priority, because they're really going to be our legacy.
Hmm.
Um, I think those are things that really make a difference and make life worthwhile for us. I'm trying to do some exercise now and get my body back in shape, which at 52 years of age is really tough, especially when you've been neglecting your body for so long. If I know I was going to
Hmm.
live this long, I would have took better care of myself.
And that's the truth. Yeah, exactly. Man, when we were invincible in our 20s, even into my 30s, I felt the same way. But
Yep.
it seemed like 38 came. I was like, where the heck that come from? Yeah. So, other than your book, of course, I want to get a hold of and definitely get into that. But what are you reading or listening to that you'd recommend to our abundant leaders, and why?
I'll tell you a book that I'm reading, or I've just finished reading, is a book called Messiology. It's by a guy named George Verwer. He's a missionary, and is kind of an older guy. And what I like about it is his authenticity and his honesty and his transparency. And kind of the whole theme of the book is that God uses messed up, broken people because that's all he has.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? I
Hmm.
mean, and to me, that's just comforting, just to think that God uses, even, God uses messed up, broken churches, messed up, broken businesses, because that's really all he's got. And,
Hmm.
that's kind of the economy of God. And so just to take a deep breath and know that, life, we're never going to be perfect. It's more about direction than perfection. It's
Yeah.
about, the perfection is taken care of spiritually, because, Jesus took our place and he's our substitute and all that. But it's more about direction, and so it's a good book, Messiology. Yeah, a ton of books, but that's the most recent one I've read.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. I'll check that out. What do you feel holds most people back from living a life of true abundance?
Fear.
Can you build on that a little bit? I know there's a lot of fear going on right now.
Absolutely, fear. I mean, we're afraid of things that may never happen. I mean, like we've said, COVID virus. Everybody's afraid of something that, I mean, we're so afraid of dying that we don't actually live, and that's one of the things about going to Africa that really changes my attitude, even about
Hmm.
the COVID virus. I mean, we talk about ventilators and resources. Well, there are no ventilators in Africa. So if you get COVID virus, guess what? You're dead. I mean,
Hmm.
there is no resources. And so, and it's funny, those people, they don't seem to have a fear of death. I think death and the fact knowing that bad things are just going to sometimes happen, that they just are so much more accepting of that than we are. I mean, we think that everything in our life, all of our ducks have to be in a row, and I think fear keeps us from moving forward. It keeps us from taking the next step and fulfilling the purposes for which we were designed to walk in. I mean, fear is just one of the most crippling things, and we all experience fear. I mean, I think fear is a common emotion that we all go through. I mean, don't you, Wally? I mean, there's days that I just feel like, I'm just afraid, and so we all have those experiences, but we still have to get up and keep going. Who was it, Wally? I think it was John Wayne said this. Fear is being scared to death but saddling up anyway. We still got
Hmm.
to we still got to get up and keep going in spite of our fear. I mean, so yeah, I think fear is one of the most debilitating things that uh, that people face.
It's a very good point. And, fear can be a very good tool as well, because I'll give you an example. When I was airborne and jumped out of, perfectly good airplanes with a bunch of other guys at night, nonetheless, in the middle, jumping into the dark, my senses I was alert every single time. I'm paying attention to the guy in front of me, because so much can go wrong so
Right.
quickly. And it really heightened my senses, and I used the fear and as a way to really pay very close attention to my surroundings and everything around me, and take an action anyway, taking the jump. Because people say, well, all failure is the act of taking no action. So,
Correct. Yeah.
and if you really look at the definition of it, so ultimately, as long as you're taking action, then you're not failing by definition, you're moving forward. But fear can be paralyzing. I mean, you think scared stiff. It's real.
Yeah, that's
Fear
something
is real.
I've never jumped out of a plane, Wally. I mean, that's something that man, I'm going to have to do one of these days.
Well, I did it in the
Once I
military,
get over my fear.
yeah, for sure. Well, that's how you do it.
It's easy to say it. It's a different thing to jump out of a plane.
It is for
Uh,
sure. There's no doubt about it. But yeah, and it's the same thing as, a salesman picking up the phone,
yep.
or a new salesman, or, just picking up the phone, or, calling that significant other that you hope you will be a significant other at some point, and calling them up and saying, hey, will you go out on a date? It's fear. Your palms start
Yep.
sweating and you get scared. But look, if here's the fact, here's the truth: if you don't do it, you're never gonna get what it is that you're after.
Hmm.
You got to take that action, so you got to get over that.
And I really
Easier
like
said
what
than
you
done.
and I really like what you said. That failure is often just inaction. I mean, it's just
Mm-hmm.
not. It's just there's risk in not doing anything as well. I mean, we're going to
Mm-hmm.
face risk no matter what, and so why not move forward?
Yeah, absolutely. You got to do it one way or another anyway. So might as well move forward and get closer to the goals that you want. So, what does being a man of abundance mean to you?
Abundance is one of those words that just has so many connotations. I mean, I think that we can live an abundant life, as God promised, uh, in whatever circumstances we face, whether it be, being financially wealthy or being broke. I mean, I can't tell you, one of the things too, going over to Africa, I've realized is that so often we focus on our resources instead of focusing on the source, and I'll tell you, I had a lady once. I'm going to tell you this story real quick, but
Mm-hmm.
there was a lady that came in when I was at Bongolo, which is over in the Congo, and she had gotten stabbed with a machete in her axilla, was up in the armpit. If you know about those injuries, those are tough injuries to
Mm-hmm.
fix. And the lady was bleeding to death. It was the middle of the night, and it was just a mess. You can't get blood. There's no ventilators, and you know, I realized through a prayer of one of the residents that time that really the source was not, that the that we shouldn't focus on the resources but on the source. And I don't know how that lady survived, but we fixed that lady's artery and she walked out of the hospital. And I began to realize, that really abundance comes from drawing upon the source, and no matter what circumstances that we're in. I mean, if we're drawing upon the resources that God gives us and focusing on the source, we're going to be okay. And I think that's how Paul was able to say, I've learned to be content in whatever state that I'm in, whether I'm, whether I'm I'm in poverty or I'm in abundance, I'm content, and I'll tell you, even health wise, I mean, some of the healthiest people I've seen are people who are dying with cancer. And so it gives a whole different, I think, dimension to what it means to live an abundant life when we focus on the source and we draw upon the source and the things that God gives us.
Absolutely wonderful. I love that. That's a great way to end this out, and we're going to close this up. But before we do, actually, I want to ensure that you got your message out that you wanted to get out. So what did we not talk about that you want to ensure that our abundant leaders get out of our conversation today, and how can we get more of you other than getting your book on Amazon?
Well, I think we talked about life, the universe, and everything today, Wally.
I think we solved it all.
So, you can connect with me at charleswpage.com. If you would like, you can get more information by texting the word believe to 66866, and that'll connect you with our, with some of our literature and stuff. I mean, we've got some free stuff and free books that you can download on our website. But, right now, the book is for free. I'm experiencing abundance by starving to death. But anyway, you can get the book for free, A Spoonful of Courage, there on Amazon, and download the Kindle. If you would just leave me if you do get it for free, leave me a positive review. That would help out a lot. So, but we're here to sell. I mean, we're here to serve people, not sell them something. So, but you can, like I said, if you just text believe to 66866, you can reach us there too.
Excellent. And guys, listen, if you do go get that book for free, be abundant in your actions, pay it forward, leave a review, because that's how you're paying for the book. And on top of that, you're getting so much out of it without a doubt. So be abundant in your actions and pay it forward on that one. I greatly appreciate this conversation. It was a blast. I look forward to sharing you with everybody else. So go out, live your life of abundance, Doc, and keep paying it forward.
Thank you, Wally. Thanks for having me on the show.
For sure. All right, so here's your action step for today. First off, go out and tell everybody I'm back. Men of Abundance is back. We're going to be getting on a regular schedule again, sharing you all of these amazing conversations. The second action step is go leave a rating and review for Men of Abundance on your favorite podcast player or Apple iTunes, specifically Apple, because that's where the mecca of podcasts is at. They all go through there. So please, if you have access to Apple, leave a rating and review on Apple iTunes or Apple Podcast, whatever they're calling it these days, or at least on your favorite podcast player. Take a screenshot of the episode of your favorite episode or the one you're listening to, post it on social media, hashtag Men of Abundance, and tag me, especially if we are connected on that platform. I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Pinterest, TikTok. I'm on all of them. So be abundant in your actions today. Make sure you pay it forward however you see fit, and leave a rating and review. Now, go out and live your life of abundance, and make sure to pay it forward.
That's all for today, Abundance Leaders. For more about our guests and the powerful information we shared with you today, be sure to sign up for our mailing list at menofabundance.com. We appreciate your time and look forward to hanging out with you on our next episode. So until then, be sure to pay it forward and live your life of abundance.